Okay, let's get started. My name's Ron. I'm an alcoholic. Hey, Ron! How you all doing tonight? Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. Sorry for our location swap. They have a code blue during March, and so our group has to relocate to give room housing for the homeless, so it's a pretty noble cause. Important announcement, our anniversary is 4/21/18. There's flyers up here. We have a one-day mini convention here. It'll start at 9 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. It will be in our normal spot right across the street at St. Paul's. We have 7 different speakers. Mickey Bush is one of them, Chris S. from New Jersey, Doug M. from Virginia, John T. from New York City, Lena N. from Russia, Chris D. from New York City, and Dave M. from Maryland. It's all absolutely free, donation supported, so come out. We want to give a free lunch and everything. We like putting these on. We usually put on 3 to 4 each year. And it's because of your donations and your contributions and your steady support of this group. So anyway, the flyers are there. If you weren't here last week, Peter M. was up from Florida. We have about 75 CDs there. So take one with you, please. They're free. It's nice to have in the car. You get in a traffic jam, you throw one of them in. Be amazed how much serenity comes from a CD when you need it, right? Anyway, who's our chairperson? Where is Nick's going to come up here and chair this, and so enjoy the night and thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Nick. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey.
Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday night, St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street, 8:30 p.m. in Doylestown. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 p.m. to 7:30 right here. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves by their first name? Yes, please. Hello, Lisa. Welcome. Yes.
Francine, alcoholic.
Hey, Francine. Welcome. Hey, Steve. Welcome. Yes.
Nikki, alcoholic.
Hey, Nikki. Welcome. Yes.
Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Jenny. Welcome. All right. I'm glad you're all here. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to be sponsored, please raise your hands. Awesome. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? Yes, sir.
My name's David. I'm an alcoholic. The Came to Believe meeting is going to have their anniversary on April 17th. That's at Pebble Hill Church in Doylestown. 6:30 food and fellowship. 7:30 is the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Dave, alcoholic.
Hey, Dave.
On April 20th through the 22nd, the Big Book Comes Alive group from Bethlehem is having their 4th annual convention at the Best Western Hotel on 512 and 22 in Bethlehem. There are 2 speakers coming in, one from Tennessee and one from Las Vegas. And just flyers on the internet and all that stuff, and all is welcome.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
I'm Ryan, I'm an alcoholic.
Ryan.
Piggyback on that, the cost is $45 per person, plus the banquet if you go to it. It is 3 days. It starts at 1 p.m. Or 3 p.m. I'm sorry, on Friday. Ends at 1 p.m. on Sunday. And the website is bigbookcomesalivepa.com or org, one of the two.
Org.
Thank you.
Org it is.
Awards.
Wow. All right. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help those who can't afford them, you can put donations in a jar up here on the table, marked big book and CD donations. If you'd like a CD of any speaker, past or present, please see me or Ron before or after the meeting. They are available free of charge. And I've asked, who's reading the preamble? Aiden, to please read the AA preamble.
Hey guys, I'm Hayden. I'm a recovering alcoholic.
Hi, Hayden.
The AA preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, and does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And I think Sean is reading the 12 steps.
Yes, thanks.
Hi, I'm Sean. I'm an alcoholic. Okay, the 12 steps of recovery. Number 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and practice these principles in all our affairs. Thank you.
And thanks for reading.
Our 7th tradition states every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outright contributions. At this time, I'd like to pass around the basket. We have no dues or fees, but we have expenses. The group provides many services. Your donations cover rent, big books, CDs, events, and workshops, etc. There is absolutely no smoking on church property. Please dispose of your cigarette butts accordingly. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now I'll introduce a speaker as a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group. Comes to us on loan from Staten Island, New York, the Serenity Lounge Group, Miss Francine B.
So just adjust this here. That should be good. Look what I'm doing. Are we good? Everybody hear me? Yep. I'm loud. I'm from Staten Island. You can hear me even if without this thing. Hi everybody. My name is Francine and I am an alcoholic. Hey, Francine. I am incredibly grateful to be here tonight with you. And I want to thank Ron for asking me to speak. I'm like taking a second to slow down. So my sponsor lives in Texas and I'm from good old Staten Island, New York. So every week when we meet together over FaceTime, he reminds me to slow the beep down. So I'm going to try and do that tonight. I was actually supposed to speak for this group a few weeks ago in the beginning of March, and Ron had called me and asked if I'd be willing to be relocated to a different time. And I said, sure, no problem. You know, wherever you need to fit me, that's fine. And so he said, how about the last Saturday in March? And I checked my schedule. It worked out. So I said, great. And then this week, he told me that he had the flyer. He gave me the website. So I went onto the website to take a look. And I saw that last week, Peter M. spoke. And suddenly, I did not want to come here and speak. I didn't want to come to your group. I didn't want to come speak, and I started thinking, I wonder if I could change the time, if something could magically come up that requires me to speak at a different time. And then, a few days ago, I was doing my morning meditation, and what I think was God's voice came in and said, you're better than Peter anyway, you'll be fine. So here I am. So actually to share my love for people like Peter M. who show up whenever and wherever AA calls. I was probably about a little bit under a year sober, and Peter M. was coming to share at my then home group, which is now a Vision for You on Staten Island. They meet on Sunday evenings. And the way the room was set up, it was kind of like, almost like a horseshoe. And it was almost like a horseshoe. And I was smack down in the middle of that horseshoe, staring him head on. And I was a part of, I'm going to keep going.
Go for it. Just go for it.
I was a part of a committee at that time for a holiday marathon, and so we would, every Sunday during this specific time, we would have to leave our home group just a little bit early to get over to the other side of Staten Island to make sure we could host this committee meeting for this holiday marathon. And I remember that night was the first time that someone pulled me in by the gut. And really, the first time where I felt this feeling of that I am going to be okay, that there is a life out there beyond my wildest dreams. And actually, to prove that, they wound up having to leave me at the meeting because I was so tunnel vision staring at this man, listening to him share about his relationship with God and how this came to be, that they couldn't get my attention to be like, it's time to go, and they had to leave me. So I'm incredibly honored and grateful to be speaking after Peter M. So to reintroduce myself, my name is Francine B and I am a grateful recovered alcoholic. I am from Staten Island. My home group is Serenity Lounge. We meet on Thursdays at 7 p.m. I would tell you where, but you probably won't know. So it's Staten Island. If you'd ever like to come down and join us, we would be happy to have you. We're a Big Book Beginners meeting, and we get a lot of newcomers, and I love that. I love, at the beginning of our meeting, when we say, is there anybody new, there are always hands shooting up saying that they're new, because we have a message of hope to offer. And when I walked in this room tonight, I knew that you had a message of hope to offer, and so I thank you so much for being here. My sober date is November 8th, 2008. It's by God's grace that I was removed from alcohol almost 10 years ago, God willing, later this year. And I have a sponsor. His name is Rick W. He lives in Texas, and by God's grace, I have the opportunity to sponsor other women today. So that's always the spiel I give at the beginning of every time I share. And I say that because I flip-flopped at AA for a few years, and none of those things were in place. Those things hold me in place today. They're the foundation of my recovery. To tell you a little bit about myself, I was born in Bucaramanga, Colombia, over in South America, and I was born to a 15-year-old woman who couldn't care for me. She wanted to care for me, but she couldn't. And so the first 9 months of my life were spent her taking me to an orphanage, and then taking me back, and bringing me to an orphanage, and taking me back. And all the while, I had my lovely parents here who were waiting to hear the final word. Is she coming with us or not? And finally, that woman, who I will forever be indebted to, decided that it was best to step back and to give me a life that she couldn't give me. And she did that by giving me up for adoption. So my two parents are of Italian-American descent, and they are your stereotypical Staten Island, New York, Italian parents. I am one of 7 children. I am one of 4 adopted children out of those 7. And so my life growing up was chaotic. It was the fun and dysfunctional. It was loud. It was my dad yelling, Marianne, Francine, whatever your name is, come here. That was the life I grew up in. It was stable. There was nothing actually wrong. I didn't grow up being abused. I didn't know why from a very young age. I had all these feelings inside that told me that I wasn't good enough, that had me scared. But I was a smart little girl, and I overcompensated for that. So I wasn't the girl who was like quiet and timid and in the corner. I was always loud and in your face. And over here, guys, over here, here's where I am. That's the way I lived my life. And I lived like that from as young as I can remember. I didn't know any different. I didn't know why when I was reprimanded, I turned inside myself. And I felt such deep hatred from such a young age. And I grew up, knowing how my manipulative bones were just so neatly assembled within my body, I'll say. because I knew how to work those parents, how to work those school counselors, and I knew how to get around. When I was 9 years old, we were at a family party. It was my aunt's wedding, and that was the first time I had a drink. Not the first time I was drunk, but the first time I had a drink. And I remember all the adults were up and were over at a different part of the catering hall taking a picture. And so I took that opportunity to go along the table drinking all their water drinks down. And I remember a little bit later that evening, I had a cousin. She was a few years older, and she had turned to me and she had said, "Oh, you're so annoying. Why are you asking for attention?" And she was right. I was asking for attention, but that was neither here nor there. What had happened in that moment when she had said that to me is I had felt this like combustion of feelings within myself that I didn't know how to explain at the time. And so I drank a little more that night. And I don't want to say that the race started then. It didn't. I'd be lying if I said that. So cut to a few years later, I'm 12 years old and I'm in therapy for the first time. I don't know why. My mother doesn't know why. My father doesn't know why. I don't know why I feel like that little egg in the Zoloft commercial that has a little cloud above them and rain is always pouring down. I don't know why I have a journal and I write really weird things in that journal. I don't know why all of these things exist within me, why this noise, those worldly clamors are so loud at the age of 12, but I know they're there. I know something's wrong. And so I start to seek help. I'm a teenage chicken soup for the teenage soul kind of girl. I'm trying to find my way because there's something wrong and I need to know what that is. So I start to go to therapy. And I attend therapy for a few years, and we talk about all good stuff, abandonment issues, daddy issues, mommy issues. I got them. But I still can't figure out exactly what's going on. I'm 13 now, and I'm hanging outside with the kids in the corner. But I'm judging them because they're losers. Because I was very neatly contained. And that's the way I like to talk about what kind of younger child I was. I was very contained. And I was not going to be a loser on the corner. I was not going to smoke Newports and drink beer and try different non-conference-proof substances. That wasn't going to be me. I had a bright future ahead of me. If you would have asked me at 8, 9, 10, 11 what I was going to do, I was grandiose even then. I was going to go to Stanford. I was going to become a lawyer. And eventually I would take that law to Washington, D.C. That's what I was going to do. And I was not going to fall in the cracks that I had seen the other kids fall into. What I later learned is that I was trying to manage my life even then. And so cut to that magic age of 13. And I finally give in. I'm tired of being called Granny Franny, which is what they called me. I'm tired of being called PPMS, which stood for Permanent PMS. And I give up. So here I am. Let's drink. And I manipulated a neighbor's brother to buy us alcohol. And what happened that night was going to happen many, many, many nights after that. But it was the first time. And I didn't realize it then, but I realize it now, that what happened that night is that very tightly contained little girl, she was able to unravel. And alcohol was the treatment for all the isms I was feeling inside. Alcohol quieted the noise. Alcohol, I don't even want to say it made me feel a part of. It made me not care if I felt a part of. It made me not care if I wasn't good enough. And it made me unravel. And unravel, I did. I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous when I was 18 years old. That's because my downward spiral was fast and it was furious. I very quickly got into other substances. And I very quickly started doing things like hiding alcohol and drinking in the car and drinking and driving and lying and all of those behaviors that unraveled when I was drinking just started to become a normal way of life. And I started visiting psych wards because nobody could understand what was going on with me. I don't come from a family of alcoholics, so they just couldn't understand what is going on with her. And so they sent me away to state-funded hospitals, and then they sent me away up to Four Winds in Katona, New York, and I spent a month there. And I remembered a few years after being sober, I didn't remember then, that at the very end of my stay there, my counselor at the time had sat with me, and she had given me a piece of paper that had a few different anonymous intergroup members on it. And she had told me that based on all the therapy we had done in that last month, and based on the urine sample and the blood work that they had taken during my intake, that they thought it would be best if I checked out those fellowships. And I forgot all about that, because as smart as I was, I couldn't make any connection. I couldn't make any connection to what I was feeling and what actually might be going on. I was always a seeker. I will always say that. I was always a seeker, and I remain a seeker. But I saw it in all the wrong places. I saw it in a lot of different substances. I saw it at a lot of bottles, at a lot of people, a lot of places, a lot of things. I was always seeking externally to fix something that was wrong internally. I was always relying on my brain to get me out of something that my brain got me into in the first place. And so finally, I am around 18 years old, and I am repeating, I'm getting ready to repeat my senior year of high school, because that bright little girl tore down those big promises, and I was told that I wasn't able to graduate high school. So I had to go and repeat that senior year. I was not about to repeat that senior year at the school at which I had just done 4 years, because my ego would not allow that, so I transferred schools. And it was around November of 2006. And I worked at a deli at the time, and I was always showing up drunk or hungover or what have you, and I always worked the morning shift. So I had this gentleman that would come in every single morning. And he was always really nice to me, and we had always just shared just a few kind words. I could tell he was going on to his way to work. He was wearing some kind of uniform. And then finally, one morning, he had come in, and I had my head on the counter. I didn't see him walk in. And we had our usual conversation, but my eyes were a little bloodshot. And it's so funny how when we're in the cups, we don't think that other people notice. We think that we're kind of hiding what's really going on. But I guess if you spot it, you got it, because this man knew exactly what was going on. And he had said to me that he was sober for 19 years, and he would love to help me if I wanted help. And so he wrote his number down on a piece of paper and told me that if I was ever interested in attending AA meetings, that he'd be happy to point me in the direction of some to attend. And so he slid that paper across the table, and I thanked him because I was a phony, even though I wanted to tell him where he could go. And I put that piece of paper in my pocket. The next few months went on as they had always done. I had deemed the name Garbage Head in my neighborhood. Bingy, some would call me Bingy, that was nice and classy. And what was happening very, very, very quickly was I was setting these lines in sand, right? Or I was hitting these bottoms, except the problem was that these bottoms had trap doors. And every time I hit a bottom, a new trap door opened. And I hit another bottom. And every time I made a line that I wasn't going to cross, I crossed. And very quickly, my self-respect went out the window. And I had a lot of self-degradation, and I had no hope, and the noise was louder than ever. And so around New Year's Eve, around that time, was a day like any other. I didn't have much going on in my life that took up my time, so I was pretty much a round-the-clock drinker. And that day proceeded as normal. And meeting different people to see what I could get out of you, and manipulating and lying and all of that. And at nighttime, I had a party to attend. And so I attended that party, and I made an absolute fool of myself, as always. And then at the end of that party, when people started passing out, because I was around other teenagers who were drinking, when they started passing out, something different was happening within me. I couldn't pass out. I don't know if it was like the mixture of cocktails or what it was, but for some reason, I could not pass out. And so I had to sober up awake. And I don't know if anybody knows what that's like, to sober up awake. My skin was crawling, and I remember staring out a window, and it was the first time that I had really had intention behind this thought, right? Because I was an attention seeker and I was manipulative. So at the jump of ever needing to use it, I was going to hurt myself. That was me. But this was the first time that nobody was around and everything was really quiet, and I stood staring at that window, and I stood thinking, all it would take is just to push off the ledge. And that scared me to my core. So I finished sobering up, and that next day I had to go to a job. I fell asleep at that job and lost that job. And you know, it's so funny how God intervenes. And God puts things in place, because I was wearing a jacket that I hadn't worn in a little while, and I put my hands in my pocket because it was cold outside, and I pulled out that man's number. His name is Keith. And so the day after New Year's, I called Keith and I asked him to point me in the direction of a meeting, and he did. And so my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous was somewhere around January 4th, 2007, and I showed up to a table meeting. That's what it was. It was a table meeting. And what that meant was it was a big old room, and there were a lot of different tables for lots of, opens the meeting as one big meeting, and then everyone split off into their own separate little meetings. And so my first introduction to Alcoholics Anonymous was we are people who normally would not mix brought to life. And what I mean by that is I walked up to the doors, and the first person who greeted me, his name was Joe S. He had a pinky ring and a matching blue velour suit on. And Joe S. introduced me to Tina. And Tina introduced me to Marianne. And for all intents and purposes, Tina and Marianne looked like Joan Jett and Cyndi Lauper, respectively. I'm talking jet black hair, jet black nails, bright blonde hair, crimped, it was crimped, and all these people were super sweet, but I had this moment where I thought, where am I? And what happened in that meeting was I sat in the room and I listened to people share about their time, and I listened to people share about gratitude, and I had started to feel something different. I started to feel warm. I didn't know why, but I knew I was in the right place. And I had no idea what alcoholism was, but when it came to my turn around the table, I said, "Hi, I'm Francine, and I'm an alcoholic." And I shared that for the next 2 years, having no idea what alcoholism really was, or why I couldn't stop drinking. And so that night I met a bunch of wonderful people, and they were people who welcomed me with open arms. And they are the reason that whenever anybody walks into a room of Alcoholics Anonymous, whether it's my home group or not, I am there with a smile on my face, shaking their hand like you people did tonight. That being said, they gave me a meeting list because even almost 12 years ago, their cell phones just, I don't know, if they didn't plug your cell phone number in your own cell phone. They still wrote they wrote numbers down on meeting lists. And so they had given me a meeting list filled with a bunch of women's numbers, and there was this one particular woman who handed me that meeting list, and she said to me, "If you want a drink, call me." And I said, "Okay, thank you." And she circled some meetings for me, and she told me where I could find her next. And I felt hopeful, and I felt like I could do this, which was my first mistake. But I didn't know that at the time either. And so, cut to maybe later that night, maybe the next night, I wanted to drink, and I drank. And I saw that woman 3 days later at a Saturday morning meeting, and I walked in that meeting, and she was peppy as ever, and she said, "Hi, Francine! How many days do you have now?" And I said, "1." And she said, "Oh, why didn't you call me?" And I gave the first honest answer that I had ever given, probably in a few years. And that answer was this: I don't know. Because I had no idea why, when the thought came in to drink, I didn't think to call this woman. I had no idea why, when the thought came in to drink, I couldn't just write off some gratitude things that I was grateful for and figure it out. Why I couldn't look at my feelings chart and identify what I was feeling, what was triggering that emotion, and move on. I didn't know why. And so I told her I didn't know. And I spent the next 2 years in Alcoholics Anonymous not knowing why, but being damn sure going to find out. And so AA was the last house on the block for me for sure. That being said, finding the center of our triangle was the last room in the last house for me, because I was going to try every which way to do it a little bit differently. And so by the time I had gotten sober, I had been to something like 13 institutions, that being detoxes, psych wards, rehabs, double dipping in rehabs. And I was really, really, really trying to figure out what's wrong with me. Why am I welcoming Sue into a meeting who's at her first meeting, and then 90 days later, why am I watching Sue get a pin for 90 days, and I'm still sitting in the room saying, "Hi, I'm Francine, I'm an alcoholic, I have 1 day back," again? Why is it months later, and that noise is still so loud? Why is it when I want to drink, I can't just play the tape through? What is wrong with me? And so I sat in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous among other alcoholics thinking, what is wrong with me? And I went to when I wound up getting sober, I wound up joining that home group I told you about, the Victory Group, A Vision for You. But when I was first coming around, I was brought to that meeting. And I forgot this. And I remembered why I never went back. It's because the man chairing the meeting gave me a resentment. I didn't know he gave me a resentment. I didn't know what a resentment was. But I knew that he could go screw himself and I wasn't coming back. And I didn't. But when my back is up against the wall enough and there's a big old rock in front of my face, I might be willing to do things a little bit differently. Might be. I wasn't. So what happened was, sometime in about April of 2008, I had decided that this was just getting sad. This was just getting to be too much. I was way too tired. I was way too embarrassed of making a fool of myself. I was a really sloppy drunk. I was the drunk that would pee in your car. I was the drunk that would show up to meetings and interrupt the meeting. It was just a really sad thing to witness, especially because I couldn't put anything past, my average was anywhere between 18 and 21 days. So I would get to 18 or 21 days and all of a sudden, I'm Francine, I'm an alcoholic, and I have 1 day back again. And so I decided in April of 2008 that I'm going to ride this thing till the wheels fall off. And whatever may come will come. And I'm going to stop going to meetings because I can't do it anymore. Because I can't sit in AA anymore drunk. And so I did that. And so I stopped coming to meetings for a few months. And sometime in the summer, probably late June, I get a phone call, getting ready to go out. And I'm getting ready, waiting for my friends to come pick me up. And, and my phone rings. And there's a young lady on the other line and on the other side of the phone, and she says, "Hi, Francine. I don't know if you'll remember me, but we met in April. We met at such and such meeting, and you're one of the numbers that was on my list. I was away at boarding school, but I'm home now, and I'm so afraid I'm going to drink. I called all the women on my mailing list, and nobody answered but you. Can you take me to a meeting? And I did not want to take this girl to a meeting, because I did not want to come back here and remember all the feelings of hope I had once felt. I wanted to sit and wallow in the acceptance that I felt that this is going to be my life. I am not going to make 21. That phone call, the phone call is going to come from my parents one day, and I have accepted that. So no, I can't take you to a meeting. So I started making calls to other women to take her to a meeting, and none of those women would answer the phone, except that first sponsor that would pick me up from my repeated senior year of high school. She answered the phone. And I asked her, Virginia, please take this girl to a meeting. She needs a meeting. I don't want to leave her hanging, but I can't take her. I can't take her to a meeting. I'm going out in a little while. I can't take her. And she had said, Francine, I have my girls today, but if there's anything you learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, it's that if anyone reaches out their hand for help, we don't turn our back. So take an hour out of your day and go take that girl to a meeting. And for some reason, I listened. Because why should this girl struggle at my own expense? So I had those friends that were picking me up, make a pit stop, and we went to a meeting, and they waited outside for an hour, and I sat with her in that meeting. And I don't know where that girl is today, but I know she saved my life. I know that God utilized that girl that day to save my life, because I sat in that meeting with my pinky ring friend, Joe S., and I cried. Because that language of the heart got through again. And at the end of the meeting, Joe S. gave me a hug. And he said to me something that I'll never forget. He said, I don't know, kid. I'm happy you're here, but keep coming back is running out on you. And I will forever be grateful for that man who looked me in the eye to tell me the truth. That while I am always welcomed back, keep coming back will run out. And so he had said, I don't know, maybe you want to try the Victory Group. Go to the Victory Group, get one of those big book people, have them take you through the steps. That's how he said it. And so I said, okay. And so I called that sponsor again, and I asked her to take me to the Victory Group. And we went to the Victory Group, and I saw the man who gave me a resentment, and I made sure he saw me walk right by him and not say hello. And I sat and I listened. And I listened to you all share about a God of your understanding. I listened to you share about hope. I listened to you share about the most important thing in your life today being service. I listened to you tell me that Alcoholics Anonymous is a selfless program. And at the end of that meeting, I walked up to a girl that I was never going to walk up to. Because on Staten Island at that time, again, even 10 years ago, there wasn't a really, really big young presence. And so it was like me, her, and another girl. All in their like youngish 20s, somewhere around there. And I didn't want to ask this girl to sponsor me. Because I didn't like her very much. And I didn't like her very much because she was everything I wasn't. Because she looked people in the eye when she spoke to them. Because when she sat in a meeting, she didn't shake uncontrollably. Because she looked like she had a sense of self. And that she was able to be herself unapologetically. And I didn't like that. But, again, being at my wit's end, I walked up to her at the end of the meeting. And I said, as I stared at the floor, will you help me? And she said she would. She reminded me that she wasn't my mom, and that she wasn't my principal, and that she wasn't my parole officer or my therapist, that she was my sponsor. And what that meant was she was going to meet with me weekly so we could go through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. That I was going to get a home group, and I was going to ask that home group if I could be of service somehow. That I was going to make meetings since my life consisted of nothing, because I had gotten kicked out of college again. And that we were going to do this thing. And then she taught me about our triangle. And she taught me about service, unity, and recovery. And I'd love to tell you that from the moment we met, I haven't had a drink since then. I'd be lying if I said that too. Because when I tell you that I am a resilient alcoholic, I mean that. And so even through meeting with her weekly, I couldn't stop drinking. And I remember, I had gone into a facility in Pennsylvania, and I knew everything. You didn't have to share with me anything about anything, because I already knew, because I've been doing this a little while. And so, save your triggers, save your this, save your that, but I heard something different this time. I heard a few different things this time. And one of them was this man who stood up in front of the room quite like this, and he yelled in front of the room, "If you don't find a power greater than yourself in your life, you're going to die." And I thought, that is ballsy, and I sunk in my chair because I was so uncomfortable as to what was about to take place. And nobody said anything. And everybody was a little uncomfortable. And then he said it again. "If you don't find a power greater than yourself in your life, you are going to die." And I could tell that he had all of our attention at that moment. See, before then, it wasn't that I was atheist or agnostic. I just didn't understand what one had to do with the other. I sat in Alcoholics Anonymous for 2 years and had no idea what God had to do with this. How is this relationship with a thing that I can't see going to save my life? What is the point? It doesn't make any sense. What does me not being able to drink have anything to do with God? Have anything to do with a spiritual awakening? But there was something in that moment when he said that caught my attention. I signed out anyway, AMA. Because I had a life to live and things to do. And I had nothing to give and nowhere to be. But in my head, I was signing out AMA because it was time to go sing at the Apollo. I'm a singer. And I auditioned for the Apollo a few months prior, and I made it, and I had to go. And he said to me, "You don't have to go." And I said, "I have to go." And he said to me, "You don't have to go." And he just didn't understand that I had to be there. I had to be there. I had to do this thing. This thing was going to change my life, right? And I'm always seeking externally for something to change my life. And before I signed my final paper out, AMA, he looked at me and he looked me dead in my eye. His name was Jim, and he was the director of this program. And he said, "I hate to be a fatalist, kid, but you're not going to make it." And even though I stand here today, Jim was right. Because what he meant is that if I kept going the way I was going, I was not going to make it. And time proved that. And the Apollo went terribly. And I sat outside that building after crying my eyes out. And I went on a 4-day bender outside of there after that. And what my life looked like at that time was just so incredibly dark. But one of my favorite lines in our literature is how dark it is before the dawn. And today I choose to remember that Alcoholics Anonymous was born on the worst day of Bill W.'s sobriety. He talks about that being the worst day of his sobriety, the day that he phoned to meet Dr. Bob. And so I remember that when a newcomer walks into the room and they are beaten and broken and hopeless, because I know differently today. I don't know differently today just because literature tells me so. I know differently today because that is my experience. I know differently today because I was broken and I was hopeless. I had absolutely no hope when I sat across that table week after week. But we read anyway. And so I have a story of anyway. I didn't understand what was happening in these meetings, but I showed up anyway. I didn't know why I had to stand outside Decker Avenue step group with a smile on my face, shaking everyone's hand, saying, "Welcome to Decker Avenue step group." But you know what? I did it anyway. And I'm so grateful for the people who came before me, who shared those anyways with me. Because even when I came to scoff, I remained to pray. And so week after week, I would show up to May's house, and we would read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And she had me highlight and read and underline and question mark, and she was enthusiastic, and she was emphatic about this program. And I didn't go through the steps like a scared little girl. I went through the steps so eager because she made it fun. And I started learning about myself, and my first step experience came sitting across the table with her. Because I couldn't understand the first step. You see, what happened was, I read that first step, but I think I was a little dyslexic in my reading. See, it says powerless. I read less power. I read not enough power. And so I'm going to find that power, except I couldn't. I didn't understand that I was powerless. There was no power. I didn't understand that the first step meant that I will drink, not that I can't drink. See, I always thought that the first step was something to be afraid of. It means I can't drink. No. The first step means I will drink. It means I've lost power, choice, and control. It explains every night that had gone on prior. Every night I stepped out of my house and I said, I am not going to drink tonight. And someone called my name, I looked their way, and I was off to the races. Every night I said, I'm just going to have one. And I woke up in a hospital bed. My first hospitalization was my entire family surrounding it. I told you I'm one of 7. I have a lot of nosy aunts and uncles and cousins, and everyone was there. And everyone wanted to know what happened. And every hospitalization after that, one family member less. One family member less. Until I'm waking up in the hospital, chained to a bed in the hallway. I have no clothes on under the gown. I can feel that, and I have no idea why and how I got there. And I know that there is not one family member there waiting. And I'm told that my mom will send money when I'm ready to leave, and they'll call me a cab. And I know those nights where I say I'm not going to, and then I'm in a place where you can put a cigarette out on the floor, where if you're going to walk past the bed sheets that are hanging as drapes, you better walk by ducking. Places I wouldn't fly over today. And so right before the dawn, it was extremely dark. And I know today, that is why I seek a power greater than myself. I know today that is why I seek a relationship with a power greater than myself. I want to never ever forget that I am constantly walking towards or away. A woman had said that to me in early recovery. She said, you're always walking towards or away from a drink. Today I choose to say I'm walking towards or away from my higher power. I know that the further away I get, the closer I do get to that drink. I want to never forget why I walked in these rooms. But that's why I'm here. Because I've lost power, choice, and control over alcohol. That's what alcoholism is. That is how I crossed the line from a hard drinker into a real alcoholic. That is why I struggle with this allergy. That's why I can't differentiate why when you drink the same amount, you're fine and I'm not. How come you can lay off it and I can't? How come your life is not so incredibly unmanageable? My life is not unmanageable because I didn't have a job. Not because I didn't have school again. Not because no one trusts me. Not because I have no friends. My life is unmanageable because I am managing it. And every treatment facility I come out of, I am going to manage better. And I'm that little girl all over again, going to manage better. And if I can just move all these pieces around, right? Every time I left a treatment facility is because I know what I have to do. I have to get a job. I need some money. I need to just manage a little bit better. And what going through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous taught me, is that my life is unmanageable because I am managing it. It's because I need to seek a new manager. And so thank God for amazing sponsorship, who didn't hesitate to tell me that my face was dirty, who cared more about me sobering up than she did about hurting my feelings. And little little by little, I started to understand why I sit in a room of Alcoholics Anonymous and I call myself an alcoholic. Why I absolutely need to get this conscious contact with the God of my understanding. And she was fun with me. She played with me. We set up little index cards about all the things I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to speak at a meeting. I wanted to sponsor someone. I wanted to get a 90-day chip. I wanted to do service. I wanted to go back to school, to go back to college. I wanted to have a relationship with my family. And I wrote all these things down. And we tucked them away. And we kept going through the steps. And even when I drank, we kept going through the steps because we both knew something was happening here and we have to trust God. And so that last drunk that I told you about where I ended up in the hospital, right after there she calls me and as expected she tells me that she can't work with me anymore because it's getting too sad watching me. And she gave me a list of things to do. It was to finish my 4th step, which I conveniently stopped writing. It was to reread up to where we were at. She gave me a few things that I needed to do and told me that if and when I ever finished those things, I could give her a call and we could continue. Today she's one of my nearest and dearest friends, and we always recall that story as her saying she hung up that phone thinking she was never going to hear from me again. But when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And something in the middle of that night, I changed. And I sat and I finished my fear inventory and I finished my sex inventory and I wrote a sex ideal. I reread everything she wanted me to reread and I made notes. Because there was something very, very real in that moment where I realized that I was absolutely going to die. And I didn't want to die. And so I called her the next morning and I said, "Hi, I did all those things." And she said, "Okay, be at my house tonight and we'll do your 5th step." And so I drank that morning.
Wow.
And then I went to sleep. And when I came to a bunch of hours later, we met to do my 5th step. And again, she recalls that story as watching somebody become free before her very eyes. And I started to tell her things that I was never going to tell anyone because I'm disgusting and I've done terrible things. And most of those things she laughed at. And then she shared some with me for leverage so I could trust that she was going to keep this to herself. And then she after we read off my 4th step, and she had me, really take a look at how I function through life with my selfishness and dishonesty and self-seeking, how I'm inconsiderate and fearful of everything. She was leaving the room for an hour, and I was to sit with God. I was to pray and thank God. I was to go over the first 5 proposals and see if I left anything out. And I said, "Okay, thanks." And I said, "Do I get a radio?" And she said, "No radio, no TV, no cell phone, no nothing." It was 4 a.m., and there were a lot of candles lit in the room. And I hit my knees, thinking, all right, I guess we'll see what comes of this for an hour, right? I can't spend an hour alone with myself. I can't spend an hour alone with my thoughts. They're too scary. And I hit my knees. And I had that white light experience. Something changed within me in that very moment. I envisioned this very, very, very long pathway that was suddenly clear. And I cried my eyes out, and I kind of snotted all over the blanket she had laid down on that rug on my knees. And I remember she walked in, and I was like, "What?" And she said, "That's it, the hour's over." I thought she needed something because it had felt like 20 minutes. And I haven't had a drink since that night. And I am so incredibly grateful for my life today. I'd love to tell you that the last almost 10 years has been smooth sailing. But like I said, I'm an alcoholic resilient in the cups, and I'm also an alcoholic resilient in her ego. And so Alcoholics Anonymous and this relationship with this power greater than myself When I say that I'm here today by God's grace and God's grace alone, I mean that. When I say that my relationship with my higher power is the most important thing in my life today, I mean that. I mean that because it's what allows me to have a relationship with you today. I mean that because it's what allowed me to go back to school to get a degree. It's what allowed me to find real employment. It's what allowed me to do all of those things I said I wanted to do. Sponsor people, get a 90-day coin, get a year chip, and so on and so forth. It's what allows me to go to bed at night with some peace between my ears. All that's required of me is a few simple things, but they are required of me. And I have experienced both the benefits and the wonderful happiness, joy, and freedom that comes from those simple requirements and that loving relationship with my Creator. I've gotten married in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have wonderful relationships today in Alcoholics Anonymous. I get to sponsor some awesome women, show up for some amazing service, be the general service rep at my home group, co-chair our Share a Day this year. I get to do all of those awesome things. But I have also experienced what happens when I think I'm staying stagnant, but really I'm walking away. And so at somewhere between that 7-year itch, I started to walk away. And my sponsees started to annoy me when my phone rang. And my sponsor started to annoy me when she wanted me to show up. And I started experiencing this discomfort in meetings. But I forgot that it is my responsibility today as a member of good standing in Alcoholics Anonymous to be honest with myself, with somebody else, with a higher power. That's not just in my 5th step. That is my responsibility today. And I didn't do that. And so for the course of a year, I started to moonwalk out of that triangle until I found myself on Bell Boulevard in Queens, where I was living at the time, staring in the window of a bar, somewhere I never thought I'd find myself again. And God divinely interfered again. And my phone rang, and I heard from a friend who I hadn't heard from in a while. And thankfully, so thankfully, I walked into our holiday marathon that specific year, and I raised my hand. And as painful as it was, because I have a huge ego, I said I need some help. And I found a new sponsor, and I went through the steps again. And I fell back in love with Alcoholics Anonymous. This wonderful program and fellowship that saved my life. You know, I got the chance to ride over here tonight with two friends. One who has 14 years and one who has 4 months. And I just, I'm sitting in the car with her tonight, and I'm recalling some early day stuff. And I just cannot believe the life that I get to live today. And I don't mean the fact that my car is paid for and gassed up. I don't mean the fact that I'm about to go back to school to get another degree. I don't mean any of that. I don't even mean the relationship that I get to have today with my spouse. I mean the freedom that I experience today. I mean the absolute peace that comes when I sit up in the morning and I pray and meditate. I mean the relationships that I get as a result of. And so if you are sitting here tonight in this meeting, and you are brand new and you have no idea which way is up or down, join us. And if you are sitting here tonight and you're waiting for me to shut up, join us. Because Alcoholics Anonymous is nothing short of magic. And I am not a magician, but God utilizes me. And God utilizes you. And when somebody had said to me years ago that we have something sacred going on here, I rolled my eyes. But they're right. They're right. I get to stay centered in our triangle today and show up for my life. And more importantly, I get to show up for your life. I get to be of maximum service to anyone that God puts in my path without asking why, how, or when. I just do. And in doing that, I get to go to sleep at night with a clear mind. And I am so incredibly grateful for my life. Thank you so much.
Let's thank Francine one more time. Thank you very much. It's customary for us to like form a line and thank our speakers that come out all at their own time and expense just to meet with us and have a meeting with us. Next week we have, oh geez, I had it set for, we have, who is it? Paul S. from the Beacon Group of Brookline, Massachusetts. We're back in our old place right across the street from there. If you can't, look for us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page for this group, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. Gives you all the information of this group here. Not only that, but all the things that are going on within like the Tri-County area every day. We got a nice way of closing. If you care to join us, we'll circle up. And we need to put just the metal chairs away when you're done if you want to help us. Thank you.